well-being of people in this region. And so it's part of my mandate to protect this area, both from a perspective of personal well-being, but also from a resource perspective. And so this area is really well known for its fresh water, and it's really well known for its species at risk and other aspects of the fisheries. So with that, I'd like to pass off the baton to the others here today to speak a little bit about policy and initiatives about this area.
Thank you, Trevor. I'm Brian Masse, Member of Parliament for Windsor West and NDP candidate for Windsor West. I'm joined by Cheryl Hardcastle from Windsor-Tecumseh and Tracey Ramsey from Essex. And we're excited here today to build on the legacy that we've been working with, actually, with Jack Layton. The New Democratic Party instituted the position of a Great Lakes critic with regards to the importance of the Great Lakes for not only just our local region, but for our country and also for our world. And today we're proud to announce that it continues on the work of Jack appointing Joe Camartin as the first Great Lakes critic. I was the second one, but we're to announce that we officially are pushing the position of having a Great Lakes minister. That is a policy position that we have worked towards, grown from the years of understanding the significant challenges and knowing that separate department is actually needed for the Great Lakes. This is critical for not only just, again, our local economy, as Trevor has mentioned, in our environment, but also too with a number of different challenges taking place. One of the first things that I did when I actually got the critic portfolio is worked on an action plan from consultation from people of Windsor, Essex here. And about 10 years ago, we came up with the issues related to algae blooms, invasive carp, the radioactive nuclear waste that was proposed, it still is in decision, microplastics, and also water levels. From that work, we've been able to get some success. On the algae blooms, we've seen some funding go towards that over the years, and that's raised a number of different awareness issues. Invasive carp, my legislation was actually moved into regulation, so they have to be eviscerated and you can no longer advertise for them in Canada, and CBSA offers can turn invasive carp away at the border, and that was completed. The radioactive nuclear waste is still being considered, the DGR, but we've had it in abeyance now for almost a decade with regards to getting a long-term solution as opposed to a short one that would compromise our water. Microplastics, we've seen that actually passed in the House of Commons, the first legislation in the world. I'm very proud of the work that we did to that. And water levels as well too, raising that issue. So the position of a Minister for the Great Lakes would be a separate cabinet position. It would be examining the policy and the directives of the government through that specific lens. It would be a point for implementation and delivery, similar to the Fisheries and Oceans position that is there. And one of the things that we would do immediately as well too with that position of an actual Great Lake Minister is actually start looking at the IJC. The IJC is one of those agencies, the International Joint Commission, that is a treasure, but it needs to be updated and empowered. So as the Great Lakes Minister, what we would do is start working with regards to having it have some of the capabilities the EPA has, and also the Environmental Protection Agency in the United States, where they've been able to levy fines and take action. And also the issue of making the IJC more independent from politics so that they can actually initiate some of their studies and work and research on an independent basis. So those are the things that we are outlining for the Minister of the Great Lakes. We're excited about this because it is part of Jack Layton's legacy, offering propositions and more importantly working towards actions and solutions. We see here with GLEAR the wonderful work that's been done, putting not only just the science behind the work that's necessary here, but also engaging the public. And that's what a Great Lakes Minister can do. He can actually bring, or she can bring that position to fruition, making sure that the lens of all the government has an advocate for the Great Lakes for a number of reasons. I'll pass it over now to Tracey and then Cheryl.
Thank you, Brian. So for us locally, we've seen the impact of climate change, and when we talk about climate change, we don't have to look too far. We're looking into the Great Lakes that surround our entire region. We've been faced with the algal blooms that recently have been shutting down beaches in our area, threatening some of our fishing industry. We know what that impact looks like here, and this year, right here on the site, we saw extreme flooding that went right into the town and all across Windsor, Essex. I want to thank Dr. Trevor Pitcher and the work that they've done here at the Freshwater Ecology Centre infrastructure, not just on the species at risk that they're trying to protect, but also for the community work they've done. There's buoys that are out in the water to measure the water levels. They have been engaged on the municipal level, and this is what a true partnership looks like. The NDP is very proud of our work that we've done here locally, and that includes my introduction of a National Freshwater Strategy. We need a strategy in our country. This has not been updated since 1985, and we know that our freshwater is at risk in Canada, and we need to protect and preserve it. And that means looking at our wastewater infrastructure. That means ensuring there's clean drinking water across our country that we currently do not have. That means we look at invasive species and species at risk, all the biodiversity that exists inside freshwater here in Canada. But it really means that we are standing up for Windsor Essex, because we are, of course, are home to the Great Lakes surrounding us here, and we understand what a precious resource it is, what it supplies to our community, as well as the tourism opportunities that it's brought along with it here in Essex that are quite significant. So we're really proud that this piece that I introduced this spring has now become part of our platform and will be part of our policy going forward under a new Great Lakes minister. So we're very pleased to be able to always bring policy back home and make it work for us here in Windsor Essex. So now I'll turn it over to Cheryl Hardcastle for a few remarks about the flooding. But perhaps before I do, I just want to mention, because I think it's a unique flooding thing in Essex, is the impact on our farming community. You know, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the very difficult spring that we had. It was so incredibly wet in the fields that the farmers couldn't plant. I attended meetings with them. They brought down climatologists. We talked about how they could move forward with the climate change that we're experiencing, and understanding that what we've experienced this year will not be unique. You know, we've heard from locally to expect this years going forward. This is the new normal for us here, and we need a very strong, bold climate strategy that includes protection for the Great Lakes and our farmers.
Yeah, exactly. And in response to accepting this new reality, we in the NDP have proposed that we're going to expand a fund by $2.5 billion that will give these partnerships that have been mentioned already. Just think of our municipalities, the site that we're at here with Glear, the Conservation Authority that we've talked about already. We can be leveraging all of these partnerships, and they can be accessing directly a national fund, a federal fund that we're proposing. They don't have to go through the province. They don't have to have matching funds that has to be met with certain criteria and stipulations through the province. This is something that we're proposing, that we can easily access this fund and have these remediation efforts. We know, including myself, some of us in Windsor and Essex County have had flooding not just once, not just twice, some people 3, 4, 5 times, and they even have the inability to get home insurance now. What we need to do is understand that there is an infrastructure issue. Besides responding immediately to a crisis and an extreme weather event, besides that, there are things we could hit the ground running. If there's money that's identified in this federal fund, there are things that can be done right away to help mitigate the climate crisis. And municipalities know best. They work with their conservation authority as well. I'm talking about municipalities all across the country. But here where we have felt it like this, we know, we're so proud that we have actually dedicated a fund, $2.5 billion, that is direct access, so that municipalities can be nimble in reacting to climate issues and in looking at where they have seen projects that they've identified already. If we do this, this, and this, whether it's a reservoir, whether it's restoring wetlands, there are certain projects in every municipality that we know that they could be working on immediately if they had access to those kind of funds.
In conclusion, Great Lakes Minister is really, at the end of the day, about environment and economic empowerment. When we look at the issues that we have here, they're actually opportunities. And opportunities for change, but we need a point person at the cabinet that can actually advocate through the government lens and also through the members of the different members of parliament, the initiatives that are taking place through the center of our country here. We look at the issue, say for example, and I've talked to Jagmeet Singh most recently again about Ojibwe shores, where a simple signature is required to protect and create an ecological treasure that will not only just protect the species at risk, but will engage the entire communities around us in activism that's very positive and encouraging about what we can do about climate change in our environment in our own neighborhoods. You don't have to go far to actually have the experience that we all deserve. So in conclusion, I'm just very grateful that we have a chance here, I think, to bring the center of the Great Lakes to the stature that it really deserves. It's a treasure for us not only locally here, sometimes we might even take that for granted a little, but when you look at fresh water and you look at the environmental elements here, it's really the world's treasure at the end of the day, and having that empowerment and advocacy is what we're talking about.
Okay.
Excellent.
Back to politics for a second.
Are you going to switch